everyone, and welcome to our fall workshop Q&A. We're so excited that you decided to join us and just have a discussion with us and figure stuff out about how fall is going to work. And we're really excited to engage with you in that way. So take it away, Perrin.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm the marketing manager at Lyric Arts, and I'll just be moderating the chat section. So if you have a question, please feel free to throw it in the chat section for me. If you haven't already, please make sure that it says on the bottom right corner, it says to. And then if you want to click on that and make sure that you are set on all panelists and attendees. That way we can all see your question. We will ensure to get to your questions as soon as we are able to, and I'll just read them out loud for Kaylee. We do have a few questions actually quite a few questions that were sent to us earlier ahead of time. So we will start with that. And if at any point you have a question, you have a thought, and you want to just chat with us, throw your question in the chat section and we will get to it ASAP. Awesome. So we will start. Kaylee, I'll start with the first question. Paul has asked, given the recent cancellation, will there be another audition workshop offered?
Wonderful. Paul, thank you so much for your question. I believe that you are referring to the adult audition workshop. So for those of you who don't know, along with our student programming K through 12, we also do offer classes and workshops for adults 18 plus. And we did have a audition workshop scheduled for this summer that we had to cancel. But we're kind of playing with the idea of workshops right now for adults. Unlike some past years where we've had specific adult fall programming, we're still kind of figuring out what works best for adults in the virtual space. So we might be offering classes more like, you might see, this is why you should be following us on social media and be involved in our newsletter if you're not already. We might just be having more things like, hey, November 22nd, we are going to be having an audition masterclass on Zoom with one of our resident directors. So kind of a little bit more fast and fun kind of adult virtual programming moving forward. So that's kind of what you can expect, but we do hope to do an audition workshop with one of our resident directors in the coming months here. So keep looking out for that.
Awesome. Paul actually has another question as well. These two more. He asks, will all classes be virtual for the foreseeable future? That's actually a great question, Kaylee.
It is.
Module a little bit.
Yeah. So for our K through 12 students, we will be doing online, hybrid, and in-person workshops. And when I say in-person, I mean that with a lot of safety guidelines and procedures in place as well. So for our K through 12 students, for fall session 1, we plan to do all 3 of those models, with the in-person classes being 4 session classes for an hour and a half once a week, with masks and temperature checks, and proper social distancing and sanitizing guidelines. Our hybrid classes, what that means for us is it means that there'll be also 4 session classes, and your first 3 sessions will be online, but then students will come together in our space on their last day to film a presentation on our stage. So that's kind of how that model looks. And then online are 5 to 6 session classes that are 1 hour. So we spent a lot of time this summer figuring out what kind of online programming works for families. Like how long can students, sit on Zoom and be engaged? And it was really telling to us. So we're basing our fall model off of our summer model. So it's 5 to 6 sessions, 1 hour, and then once a week. So those are our 3. As far as adults, any adult workshop we do at this time will be online, as we continue to follow CDC guidelines and that sort of things as it pertains to COVID-19.
Perfect. And Kaylee, we have Wendy McCullough on the chat section asking, what classes do you suggest for beginners in 8th grade? And I raised her hand to ask another question as well in person. So I'll have you answer this one and then we'll get her in the chat room.
Awesome, sounds good. What classes do you suggest for beginners in the 8th grade? That's a wonderful question. So fall session 1, the 2 classes we're offering for 8th grade students are Comedy Club in the hybrid model, and then Actors Toolbox in the online model. And I would say either of those are wonderful options for beginners, but I would specifically say the Actors Toolbox. So that workshop is, it's less about producing some kind of product at the end, but giving students, beginner students, right, specific acting skills that they can use in a variety of spaces. So how do I make my performance dynamic? How do I use my voice and my body and speed in different ways, and that sort of thing. So I would highly recommend that class. That class is also going to include what we're calling an activity box. So since it will be online, we still want you to feel like you're engaged and getting something really physical out of it. So we'll mail you, and this is included in the price of the class, we will mail you a box. And it will have certain things they can use to engage in their home that they can use to engage with their instructor and classmates online. So I'd highly recommend that class for a beginning 8th grader.
Awesome. Wendy clarified that she was waving at you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Wonderful. Thanks, Wendy.
I do have another question from Paul. His question is, do you know of a way to connect with an agent for representation for those of us who are newer to the acting and voiceover business? Due to COVID-19, we cannot currently walk into a talent agency to ask for an agent to represent us. I was told by a fellow acting friend that representation was the best thing he ever did. So I think he's just wondering about if we maybe suggest for representation for voice.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for your question. Yeah, so I would say I don't have a lot of experience personally with actors representation in the Twin Cities specifically. I've had performing friends that do have agents. I will say in at least my community of artists, it's a little less common. Perrin herself is also a performer, so if you have anything on that, you can feel free to jump in. But what I would say is a really good resource for looking for film, commercial, voiceover, acting work, even during COVID-19, is a website called Minnesota Playlist. And I may have mentioned this to a couple people before, but when you go onto MN Playlist, it's basically where arts organizations, theaters in the Twin Cities post what they need. And I oftentimes see things like, we're looking for a voice actor for this radio play. We're looking for, especially now, right? Because that's the kind of work that people are doing. So I would encourage you to look on that website, mnplaylist.org. But also if you just kind of do so I wish I could lead you to a more specific place, but if you just go into Google and are like, talent representation in the Twin Cities, and do some digging, you can kind of get a base.
And Paul, you can also, a really great way to get in touch with agencies is to just reach out. If you have reels of your voiceover work or any reel of your commercial acting, that's a great way to get in contact with them. Because that's mainly what they're looking for. And it's really easy to get in touch. There's several agencies that will accept that as a form of audition, especially right now.
Thanks, Perrin.
Wendy asks, do you think you will have any in-person plays this year for kids?
That is a great question. So at this time, Lyric Arts as an organization, and we do have Laura here, so she can correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't plan to do anything in person this fall, so or winter for 2020. We do, we're playing and working with the idea of doing virtual performances and things you can be a part of. So I would just continue to watch our website for things like that. And performance opportunities for students, that's like really near and dear to my heart. So we're still figuring that piece out, but most likely it will be virtual for right now.
Love it. The next question. There we go. The next question is, what are the safety measures in place for in-person workshops? Because we do have the 3 different varieties.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So for the in-person or hybrid classes, how that will look, and kind of jumping off of that, like, are we going to be doing any in-person shows? So right now, as far as in-person stuff at our building, Lyric Arts education is kind of it. So our building is like pretty safe to us, because we don't have people coming for this fall session 1, because we don't have people coming in and out of it like we usually would. And so the safety procedures that we're going to be following is, first, some of you who have been with us before, we would do check-in at our side door. Check-in will be done in our lobby to provide more space for parents checking students in. You will receive a no-touch temperature check, and students will wear a mask, as well as myself and the teaching artists. And then we will practice social distance in the classroom. I've come up with a lot of fun ways to mark that on the floor for students. Each student will be given their own little pencil box that's just for them, that will contain all their craft supplies, as well as a little hourglass timer. And that hourglass timer will be used to help them gauge how long they should wash their hands, and that will belong to just them as well. And we'll probably maybe talk a little bit more about this later, but we will also, if September and October, the weather can be so, it could be all over the place. It could be freezing, it could be warm. This is Minnesota. But, if there is an opportunity for students to go on our lawn to do class, if the weather is nice, we will also utilize that, because our main purpose is to keep students as safe as possible. So those are some of our kind of basic safety procedures.
And I think a piggyback off of what you just asked, we have a question about how we arrived at these solutions for the safety precautions for in-person classes or hybrid classes.
Yeah, absolutely. So we arrived at these safety procedures based on a couple different factors. But the first and foremost is the Anoka Hennepin School District. So for those of you who may not know, or maybe don't live in the area, our building, Lyric Arts, is in the Anoka Hennepin School District. So we've really taken their lead. They decided to go back hybrid. So we, with certain procedures like masks during the day, social distancing in the classroom. So that's definitely where we started for our procedures, but also, looking at places that have opened and have been successful, keeping people safe and healthy. Places such as, doctor's office and dentist's office. What are they requiring you to have for a temperature? Pulling information from those spaces, as well as our other youth arts friends in the Twin Cities. I've been in conversation with people at Stepping Stone Theater about what their safety procedures have been and what has worked well for them. So that's kind of how we arrived at our decisions.
So why have three different types of classes is the next question. How come they're not all online like they were offered for summer camps?
That's a really good question. So when it was decided, also for those of you who don't know, the school board voted last night whether they were going to proceed with hybrid, and they decided that was what they were going to do, with maybe a late start, like starting later in September. And we actually already anticipated that, and we're starting our classes later in September as well. Now I'm getting off track. What was the original question?
I think the original question is, so we offer three different versions of classes, like in person, online, and hybrid. And so how come three and not all online this time?
Thank you, Farron. Yes, why three? So when we heard, and then last night confirmed, that the Anoka Hennepin School District was going to decide that they were going to go back somewhat in person, that we wanted to try that as well, simply because our online workshops really served our families well, and we knew we needed to keep doing that for sure. So we've always known we are going to offer enough online classes for families to have. Though the other feedback we received was my student really struggled with distance learning, and we'd love to be involved in a class, but we can't quite do that at this time. Or families who maybe they need a safe space for their student to go for, a couple hours in an evening. And luckily we have a big space and smaller class sizes. And we have a lot of control over our space. So we can offer a pretty safe environment for students. So we felt that was also a service we could grant to our families. However, like I said, we will be following the lead of the Anoka Hennepin School District. If they decide in October that they want to go back to all online, we will probably follow suit after some discussion with that. But that's kind of why we decided to do three models, because we just want our families to know that their students are going to be safe, and that we are committed to providing classes that work for every family in every situation. So that was kind of our reasoning for that.
I love it. Can you expand, the next question asks, can you expand on how each class type is different? So we've kind of touched on how we arrived at the solution and why we have three classes. Could you expand a little bit more about what is different between in-person, online, and hybrid, if you can?
Yeah, the difference between online and hybrid. So at their basic levels, the online classes are 5 to 6 sessions, and they're only 1 hour, and you will always be online. So students will do their whole class online, they'll do their performance online, and then for the hybrid class, it will be 3 sessions, 3 1-hour sessions completely online, where they will maybe create their play or learn their skills or kind of start to structure whatever their performance is going to be. And then on their 4th session, they will join us at our building following certain safety precautions for an hour and a half. And they'll get to practice their play, and then we'll film it on our stage. So really the difference is how many sessions of class, and with that last session being in person instead of online.
Thanks so much, Kaylee. Oh,
and then another point to that, as I remembered. So we've spent a lot of care thinking about class sizes and enrollment. So online classes can have more students because we, space, we are not constricted by the space and wanting to properly social distance online. Though we want to feel like each student is heard. So there'll be about 10 students for online classes, but then if you're in a hybrid, it will only be 8, because when we come back in person on that last session, we want to make sure that we only have 10 people in our building. So 8 students, myself, and the teaching artist.
That's wonderful. It's great that we have the option to do different numbers of students per each class structure. I think that's wonderful. So the next question is, are online classes for fall handled differently and approached differently than they have for summer camp workshops?
Yeah. So for those of you who are either with us or not with us, we had a lot of fun with our online summer workshops. We just had a blast. And that has everything to do with our wonderful teaching artists who just like put it all out there for their students. And we're really dedicated to the online platform, but also just your awesome students, right? They were just like, I am here and we are going to build this play and I'm going to be a Pokemon and this is my dog. Like, it was so fun and we had a great time. So I say that because our families enjoyed that format so much that it's pretty much going to be the same. The only thing that's going to change is those activity boxes that may accompany an online workshop. So in which case, so for the summer, it was just you come online, we make a play, we make some kind of fun production, virtual production, send that out to families. But this time around, there'll be classes where we mail you a little fun activity box. So that's kind of the only difference, but the times are the same.
And you actually brought up a great question that we are going to be sending little kind of worksheets and such like activities like that. And that ties into my next question, which is, what is included in the pricing of each class and what does the registration fee cover?
That's an awesome question. So if you were with us this summer, you may see a difference in price for all these different classes. So what's included in the price of each class is a couple things. One, it's of course the teaching artist, making sure you're having a quality instructor dedicated to your students. It's helping with the management of the class, you got to pay for certain things on Zoom and you got to do the management of that. So that as well, along with the activity boxes. So that's included in the price of a class that would have that. So that can be a cost. And then any kind of and then what's wrapped into the in-person registration fees, which is a good point, is just those safety measure things, right? The no-touch thermometers, the having enough supplies, having enough supplies for each student that they can have their own box and don't have to worry about sharing with others, making sure that our spaces can be as clean as possible. We'll be cleaning them weekly, deep cleaning, and then they'll be cleaned and sanitized before and after every workshop. So that's kind of what's wrapped up in the pricing of these classes at this time.
I love that. My next question pertains to the online structure of class. Mm-hmm. And the question is, of course I took the name out, but it's my student has previously struggled with distance learning. What measures are you taking to ensure that they succeed in their course, especially because it is online or hybrid?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I touched on before, that was a little bit of the feedback we got, right, when we switched to online, which we absolutely had to do this summer. But yeah, I spoke on the phone with someone who was like, my student just really struggled with distance learning, and I don't know if they could also, do the same thing for a theater class. But what we found is theater workshops are so different than going online for their class meetings for school, or doing a reading lesson. I suppose it would maybe depend on what kind of teacher they had. But what's great about the online classes is it allows us to really hear students. That's what I've loved about this, is when we were making our play and putting everything together and learning skills, because of the way it's set up, we can really like hear each student's ideas. And I think the students felt really valued in that process. And we did hear back from families, right, that were like, we were really nervous about taking this online class, and we did not know if our student could handle their attention on a screen for so long. And that was a comment we actually got a lot, which was, I was so impressed by such and such a teacher. They kept my 5-year-old's attention on Zoom for a whole hour the whole time. And so I would say if you're nervous about that, I would give it a try, because our teachers are so fun. And we had very little trouble with students like getting off task in their homes, because they were so excited about what they were making online. So that's what I'd say about that.
The next question is actually about the teaching artist and instructor. The question is, who are the faculty and or teaching artists? Are they out of a community of people who have worked with us before? I think that is what the question is asking.
Yeah, another great question. So many good questions. So our teaching artists are always, they're always theater artists from the Twin Cities community. And that's kind of where we pull from. And then we do have a group, we open it absolutely up. I will, for example, we had a stage combat class that we did online for middle schoolers this summer. And, from our teachers who had taught with us before, we really didn't have a person that was, stage combat was their thing, and they could really teach students about how to do it safely and the history and all that. So, as always, we reached out to the awesome, theater community in the Twin Cities, and we were able to have someone, his name is Aaron Pierce, and he works, he does stage combat at the Guthrie. He is, certified in just about everything, and we were really excited to have him. So we pull our teachers from experts in their field, and what was really telling about this summer is there were just teachers that shined like in the online setting, and we were really excited to kind of figure that out, right? Because online teaching for this long is new to just about everybody, but they really took it on, and so those teachers, if you had a student online that really enjoyed their teaching, those teachers are coming back for the fall. So you can be confident in that as well.
I personally would love to participate in the online stage combat. I don't know how, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's super cool. So how, yes, the next question is, how do you ensure that the instructors who are doing the hybrid or doing the in-person workshops are also following in with the precautions and the safety measures in place?
Right. So just like our families, teaching artists will have to be committed, excuse me, to wearing a mask during the class as well. I'll also be checking their temperature and recording that down before they come. It is 99.6, if you were wondering. 99.6 and below is the measure we're going off of. But so we'll be checking in with them as well. And just like with families, we'll be checking who they've been in contact with, how they're feeling. And I promise you, no teaching artist that does not feel well or is not willing to participate in the safety precautions we're taking won't be teaching an in-person class with us. So we will be keeping a close eye on that for sure. And I'll be around as well in the building always. I'm always in classes online, and I'm always in the building to help make sure that these procedures and guidelines are being carried out and being carried out in a way that is fun. Because I know we don't think of COVID-19 guidelines or any guidelines in life as always being super fun, but we're excited about finding the way that it can be. So that's kind of my answer to that.
I love that answer. It's very positive. I love to think that as at Lyric, we always try to find a fun and creative solution around whatever challenge is posing. That's the reason why I love working here. So it's nice to see that it's very much reflected in how the education classes are being handled for especially this time period. Oh, Paul says, I will wave every time I drive by Lyric Arts. I drive by there often. Oh, Paul.
Paul, we're waving back.
Waving back at you.
Not in the building, in our hearts. And when we are there for in-person classes, we will also be waving. So thanks for doing that. Thanks for thinking of us. We really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. A great question that is next is, what platform are you using for online versus hybrid? Are they the same?
Yeah, of course. So we actually put quite a bit of thought into what platform we wanted to use. And so for the summer, we decided to use Zoom. So your student may be using Google Classroom or Google Meet. We found that after talking with our teaching artists, that they felt that Zoom was more intuitive for them. So how we keep your students safe on Zoom is a couple, because safety is everywhere. It's not just in person, online as well. So how we keep students safe is everybody gets a specific login. They get it only 24 hours before the class begins. We have you log in with either your name or the student's name, so we absolutely know that that's the person that we need in the class. You sit in a waiting room and we let you in each individually. Zoom, there's a function that we can turn off the chat, so we turn off the chat, so everything's just right there on the screen. And it's easy to share, like, content, like if we want to watch a funny acting video or we need to use music, it's just worked really well for us. And families have said that it works well for them because they're like, yep, I just clicked the button and in I am. And the students, so this is you can get a little example. So every day before class, we do a check-in. We have a checklist of, is your mute button on? Is it off? Make sure you have your head and shoulders in the screen. And students were awesome about it. It was really easy for them to find the mute button, find the gallery view, because right when you're having a 5-year-old who's in, mom's in the kitchen cleaning up breakfast, mom, dad, grown up, and we were easily able to talk students through, okay, so yep, it's on the bottom of your screen. Do you see that? Great. And they'd be like, I got it. And it really gave them a sense of accomplishment too. So that's why we decided to stick with Zoom. Long answer to a simple question, but there you go.
I love that the kids really pick that up fast once they understand how it functions, and it's so rewarding to see that happen. So I completely understand what you're talking about. It's great.
Yeah.
Kind of related to that, we have a question here about technology. The person asks, I struggle with navigating technology. Will there be help and or assistance available for me to troubleshoot accessing classes and workshops? I don't know if they're talking about their kids or for themselves, but either way, I'll throw that question to you, Kaylee.
Yeah, that's another great question. So for the online classes, like I mentioned, I am always present in the Zoom classroom. I turn off my camera and my microphone, but the reason I'm there is for that very specific reason. So if a parent is struggling to get onto the Zoom room or oh my goodness, like my students with grandma and not with me, and I didn't send grandma the Zoom link, you can always call me or email me, and I'll walk you through that process. I'll get you that link, all while the teaching artist can continue to do the class, can continue with the instruction of the class. So I am here to help you with those things, and we will figure that out together. And what's great about Zoom is you don't need to buy a Zoom account to participate. It's pretty intuitive, just to, use the link I send you, and up Zoom comes, and there you go. So that's proved helpful as well, the easiness of that.
The next question is, how long are the classes? I know you briefly touched on this, but does it vary from in-person to online, and how did you go about deciding how long each classes are per class?
Oh, yeah. The length, specifically about the length of the classes.
That is correct.
Awesome. So how we decided on that, like I said, we just found that an hour is what worked for our students online. They would also get like a 2-minute break within that time online as well. So we found an hour worked well for us online, and we decided to continue with that. And then we do an hour and a half for in-person. And that's just the model that Lyric Arts has always, or for as long as I have been here, in-person classes have always been an hour and a half, because, students have to, parents and families have to drive sometimes from 30 minutes away. And we found that hour and a half makes it worth that drive. So
the next question touches on a more serious note, and
yeah.
that, what do you do if you encounter a situation where someone is diagnosed with COVID or anything else? How will you handle the class safely, and what steps will be taken to ensure that families are aware of what is going on, and everyone's just being safe?
Yeah, wonderful. So the first step of that is every family that joins us for an in-person workshop will be required to sign a waiver, and a little note on that waiver is just making sure that if they do know that their student has been in contact with a confirmed case, immediate contact, or their student has been diagnosed, that they communicate that with me. And then at which point I will do my best to get as much information as I can. When they tested, just to give us some timelines. And then I will be emailing and calling families to let you know that. And then based on what kind of details I'm able to gather, we will, the following class will be online, just to give that space. And then, like I said, depending on how much details I'm able to gather, we might do the next two classes online. Because because then we want to make sure that other students, we want to make sure that the students that were in the class with them are also still feeling good, before we decide to meet in person again. So that will kind of be our protocol, but I'm very passionate about communicating that information, even just by phone with each family, to make sure they're aware. So that's how that will work.
Thanks for that, Kaylee. I know it's not fun to talk about COVID procedures, but that's, we want to keep everybody safe. So thank you for having that well thought out plan.
Yeah.
The next question is related to that, but it's, in class etiquette. Students are required at this time to wear masks in school and in classes. Is that the same policy that we have for theater workshops? How does that work with hybrid and in-person classes?
Yeah. So we will require students to wear masks during class as well. Yes, they will be required to wear masks always. But like I said, we plan to keep it fun. This is theater. Masks aren't just masks, masks are translating devices. They're your breathing apparatus on a foreign planet. Like, that's what theater people do really well, is taking something that could be seen as some way or feel some way and making it something else. That's imagination. So they will be required to wear masks. There will be a short period during the day when students are social distanced from one another during their class, where they'll be able to just have a quick mask break where they can get that drink of water and just kind of scrunch the face. We put the mask back on before we would do anything else in class. So that's kind of how we'll be doing that.
And if there is an opportunity when they are able to be outside for the duration of the class, does that policy still apply? How will you handle that?
Yeah, so the research, has shown that if you are outside and you're social distance, that really helps a lot. So if we are outside, if we can be, we will still be social distance, but we probably won't. We will be able not to wear our masks because we'll be outside. So,
thanks, Kaylee.
Yeah.
So tied to the social distancing aspect, how many students are able to register for the in-person class? Since kind of monitoring how many can be present in the space at a time. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so on average, our classes are about 5 to 6 students. So that's how many we saw in our in-person classes and how many we saw in our online classes. So that's kind of what you can expect. However, for all in-person and hybrid classes, we will be capping it right at 8, so that there are never more than 10 people in a space at a time.
A very good question, but I didn't even think of this one. What time zone are we using for classes that are online? So say someone is out of state and they would like to participate in classes. How do they go about that? And what time zone are we using?
Yes, Central Daylight Time is the official. So that's what we will be using. And that is actually a really great question, because we had students this summer from all over the country join us for class. And we did have times where families were like, have I missed the class? Like, I can't get in. And I'm like, doesn't start for another hour. Because they were in a different time zone than us. So that's a really great question. So Central Daylight
Time. The next question, I think this is important to touch on. Why 2 fall sessions? So in the past, we've only had like 1 fall session, summer session, but this time is something special. So it's 2 fall sessions, one after another. So what are your thoughts on that, and how will each session be different from the other? If you can expand on that, Kaylee.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that was pointed out, because so let's say you look at fall session 1 and you're like, oh, that date or time doesn't work for me, or this particular class and this particular model doesn't work for me. We have a bunch of other classes coming out later for fall 2. So you can be looking out for that as well. But the main reason we're doing that is because I think in this time we've all become very familiar with, just as things are always changing, they're always moving and grooving. So having 2 different sessions allows us to make the best possible plan for your students with current information. So then we have, time to decide, the schools have decided that they need to go online until the end of December. So then when we announce fall 2 classes, they will be online. So it just allows us to have the latest research and communicate that first, because that can be so difficult, right? When like you sign up and you think it's going to be one thing, and then you get those emails like we've all gotten that is like, we will now be doing this, and then having to go through that. So it just maybe helps us have to do that a little less.
Question for you, Kaylee. This is something I, as a student, anytime I was applying for a program, this is my first question. So I'm glad someone asked. Will scholarships still be available even during COVID? Is the application process the same? Is it different? How are scholarships awarded?
Absolutely, absolutely. You can. We have scholarship funds still set aside. That's the long and short of it. And you can, and I think Perrin's going to pop it in the chat here, but if you or your student or your family is in need of a scholarship, you can fill out our application. You will then email it to me, your completed application, with the necessary documents. And then I will get back to you within 3 to 5 business days with your scholarship, if you received a scholarship, and in what percentage. So we offer 10% to 90% scholarships is our range, and we would be very excited to offer any kind of assistance to you. So we really encourage you, if that's something you need, please fill it out. And so you can join us online, hybrid, or in person, all the things.
I love that. What is our refund policy, especially everything concerned? How would that work? Is it the same as before? Is it different because we have 3 different class structures? But yeah, tell us about that, Kaylee.
Yeah, so we have a policy on our website right now, but it is not COVID-19 specific, so that will be being updated for you all to refer to, though we do have like a little disclaimer when you register for classes. But as it pertains to COVID-19, any changes, adjustments, cancellations due to COVID-19 and the safety of students, you will be granted a class credit. That's how any kind of refund or price changes. So let's say for some reason or another, due to COVID-19, we need to switch an in-person class to online. We will award you like a class credit in the difference of that price, if that makes sense, because the in-person class is a little bit more expensive than the online class. So if we have to change that model, and then you can use that class credit towards a future workshop, or a Lyric Arts ticket to a show. So you can use it on all the Lyric Arts things. But if a class is canceled due to low enrollment, this is kind of how it works. So if you yourself, right now were to go register for a class, and then 2 weeks before that class started, you're like, oh no, I forgot that we can't because of XYZ reason, you can get a refund. So 2 weeks, but anything after the 2-week mark, you will receive a class credit. And you can also always donate your registration fee, which we absolutely appreciate it. It helps us going strong. So for those of you who have done that, we thank you for that. But that's how that works. And then if I cancel a class, so if for some reason we can't run a class because of low enrollment, which is a thing, we will refund you. So yeah, so kind of a lot of plates spinning, but if it's COVID-19, you'll receive a class credit. If it's 2 weeks before or canceled due to low enrollment, it'll just be a refund.
Thanks for that, Kaylee.
Yeah.
Our last question is, what made you do this Q&A?
What made us do this Q&A is a couple things. The first thing being, and this maybe sounds like a cookie cutter answer, but I really do love our families and our parents. And I enjoy talking with you all. And our adult students like Paul. I enjoy those times when I get to engage with you. I get to engage with students a lot. you know, but parents sometimes just by email. So I was really interested in getting to connect with parents and adult students in this way. And then the other end of it is there are so many questions swirling around right now. So many decisions to be made, all of the things, and I just wanted there to be a platform and a resource. So for those of you who are with us, this Zoom webinar will be recorded and then posted on our website to be used as a tool, kind of as our free, you know, as part of our frequently asked questions, so that you can refer back as you're making these decisions. But just give you a platform to ask those questions, because, you know, these are your kids, and you want to know all the things. You want to know, like Wendy asked, what class do I sign my beginner student up for? I don't know, help me. And you want what's best for them, and you want to know about all the policies, and I want to answer those for you. So that's kind of why we wanted to do this.
Thanks so much, Kaylee. I don't believe, if there is any other additional questions, please feel free to pop it up in the chat. We'll kind of give it a couple of moments to see. But yeah, thank you so much for going through all of this, all the questions, all the good questions. And thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Big hugs to us. Thank you, Paul.
Yes.
It won't be a thing. And we, as theater people, we can all have a group hug at Lyric Arts.
Yeah, that'd be so fun. And just maybe while we're waiting a couple minutes for any additional questions, what I'll maybe speak about a little bit, because we talked kind of a lot of like about policies and procedures and what and all that kind of great stuff. But maybe just touch briefly on like, what Wendy asked, like, what kind of classes do I sign my student up for, and what are these, you know, story theater, playmaking, what does that mean? So I'll just touch on that very briefly right here at the end. We have a couple more minutes left in our time. But so how those specific models work. So if it is a story theater class, that means that we have a specific story that we're using to create, to inspire students to an original piece, or maybe they want to just act out a story verbatim. So that's kind of, we really love literature and how theater and literature combine together. So that's a way we get to do that for our students. A playmaking class, which is our most popular, is we have a theme. Maybe it's the circus, maybe it's the zoo, maybe it's Pokemon, and we make our own play. Your students make the characters, they come up with the plot. This summer I taught a class where we had a part shark and a part weasel and a unicorn that all went on an adventure to Atlantis using the Sorcerer's Stone. And we did a whole play about that. We had lines and costumes and the whole bit. And it was a lot of fun. So that's what playmaking is. And then character and creation is specifically talking about, how do I change my voice or my body to become a character? And then for our older students, we kind of have more, like the class models are a little bit more limited. So we kind of have structured our classes so that they are friendly and open to people of all experience levels. So you'll probably see, you won't see very occasionally, we'll do like an intro to acting or an intro to improv. Those will pop up. But our classes are always designed, and our teachers are great about making classes work for all experience levels. So that's kind of how that works. So we have like performance skills classes for older kids, which are specifically about, here is a skill that I could use on stage, you know, like comedy or you know, that actor's toolbox class, that kind of thing, improv. And then we have things like devising, which is kind of the grown-up version of the playmaking, where students come up with an original work and perform that in some capacity. And then we have technical theater classes as well. So, you know, costume design, makeup design, lighting, you know, the other very exciting part of theater, that other creative piece. So yeah, so I just want to touch on that briefly. So as you read those models, you can maybe find out what works for your student.
And Kaylee, while we're on that topic of different class varieties, Paul asks a great question. What can you tell us about available adult classes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we will be we have nothing on our schedule right now for adult classes. As we figure out what our community of artists and audience and adult audience members need during this time. We're still kind of figuring that out. Like, do people want, do they want to do audition prep? Do they want to do more niche classes? Like, Paul was in our Fosse dance class, which was very specific to Fosse. So just kind of figuring that out. But as I maybe mentioned, we plan to do things in kind of like sort of more pop-up, exciting adult experiences. So, register today to join us in 3 weeks for a master class with Scott Ford. And like I said, nothing's on the calendar right now, but it'll kind of be those things, come sit with us on Zoom for 2 hours and get some really good, like, condensed quality training, because, adults are busy, and we completely understand that. So, keep checking that website, keep checking in with me, and I'll make sure you're aware of those opportunities.
Keep checking for newsletters, because we will have a lot of updates about education, or if any, we have fun pop-up events or master classes, you will be the first to learn about them through the newsletters, specifically.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any last notes? I think those, I don't see any new questions popping up, but if you have any other notes to touch on, Kaylee, before we say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And if you are watching this in the future, thanks for taking the hour or a couple minutes to listen and get your answers to your questions. We really appreciate that. If you have auditions, whoa, if you have questions,
auditions,
if you have questions that come to you in the night that you want to ask, you can absolutely always email me at kaylee@lyricarts.org, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And then we will post this on our website, most likely on our possibly our overview page, or maybe our more fall specific page. Perrin and I will talk about that. But
we will make sure to email you with a link, so you will be the first to take a peek. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, it is 12:30. Well, thank you all so much. We appreciate it, and it's good to see you and connect with you and hear your questions. So thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.